Hello, Bethany. Welcome to Thursday. It just seems like another week is going by. Just a reminder, we have outdoor service on Sunday at 9 o'clock, and we'll be playing our online service at 9 o'clock too. So either join us at home or come and join us in the parking lot. So, I'd like to read a passage today from Matthew 11. 11 verse 2. And we're going to go through verse 6. When John heard in prison, that's John the Baptist, what the Messiah was doing, he sent word by his disciples and said to Jesus, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" Jesus answered them, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have the good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me." Jesus is repeating what the prophets say the Messiah will do. But what the Word says sometimes and what we view are different. The Hebrew people of the time, the people of Jerusalem, thought that the Messiah was going to come would be a great military leader like King David and throw out the Romans, just as the Maccabees did before until they lost and were all killed. Just as others who even at the time of Jesus were coming and trying to lead revolts, and one actually worked for a couple of years and got the Romans out until about the year 70, and the Romans came back and destroyed everything. See, our interpretation sometimes, is wrong. Like we have this whole thing about going back and rebuilding the temple. That's a misinterpretation. The temple doesn't matter anymore. Jesus is the new temple, he says, the one that will be torn down and rise again in 3 days. It's Jesus. It's not a building. God's not confined by a building. God is out and free. The temple curtain is torn at the moment Jesus died. But see, John was expecting something different. John was Jesus, Elijah. And now he's in prison. Soon he will have his head cut off. This is not what he expected. I mean, if he's the man who prepares the way for the Messiah, you'd think he'd get a little bit of something. Not languishing in Herod's prison, waiting for the day when just because a nice dance is given, he loses his life. I think John was expecting more. That Jesus would come and free him, that he would remove Herod, and then Jesus would take his rightful place on the throne. Whether it's a high priestly throne, or whether it was the kingly throne, or whether it was both. But it didn't happen the way John expected. Sometimes, often, things don't happen the way we expected. Somehow we've confused our national pride with our faith. But you know, even if America comes and goes, God will still be there. God's reign is not dependent upon the reign of our country, or any country for that matter. Us, or Jerusalem, or Europe, or Egypt, or Rome. So many have fallen thinking they were the one. And John misinterpretation, well, it made it to where he was expecting more than he got, and I think we do too. This is how Jesus defines the Messiah. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, and the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. It doesn't say anything there about the rich. It doesn't say anything there about prosperity gospels, that if you follow Jesus just right and pray the prayers just right, you'll be a millionaire. No, all the disciples except one died at the hands of others because of their faith. Most of them died impoverished, relying on others to care for them. See, we've kind of, like John in prison, expecting something different from God than what God really is giving us. Expecting some different calling than God's really calling us to. But I want to keep my power. I want to keep my position. I want to maintain all the stuff I have. But is it that very position, that very stuff, that very power that gets between me and God? Is it the proclamation that God loves me so much that I have so much actually the problem? Maybe the proclamation is God loves me so much so I can get by with less. God's power wasn't shown in strength. God's true power was shown in the weakness of the cross. God's true power was healing those who were broken, was giving life to those who were dead, was bringing good news of freedom to the poor. And when God says good news to the poor, it reminds me, it's supposed to remind us of the year of Jubilee, where every 7 years and every 50 years, the world would go through a change. Actually, every 49 years. So every 7 years, debt would be canceled, slaves would be freed. Every 49 years, everything would be wiped clean. Those who lost land would receive it back again. What if we did that? What if we looked at scriptures and said, this is the way to live? That maybe what I have is getting in the way of my relationship with Christ. That Christ just wants me to love him and to love others. And maybe I'm expecting too much from Christ. No, maybe I'm expecting the wrong thing from Christ. That maybe it's more about grace and God's love, and not about my power, my position, or my country. People come and go. Those who are so powerful are gone. Nations come and go. Those that were so powerful are ruins. But there's only been one constant through history. And that is God. And maybe I listen to what we use as slogans and actually trust in God, not in the paper that's written in, not in some political system, not in myself, but in God. Often I think I'm like John in prison, expecting so much more, not realizing what God has given me is beyond comprehension, beyond the limits of what I can understand, beyond all my expectations. That what God gives me is love and forgiveness. And a lot of the other stuff is just getting in the way. Something for me to think about. Have a great Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow.